Exposed power lines keep causing fires and keep not getting buried underground because it's expensive. I've heard people say, do you want to pay more taxes to fund this? No. I want you to use the exorbitant taxes you already collect to prioritize it. California is the place that spends money and gets nothing, which is why you may have noticed when the fires broke out, no one escaped by high-speed rail. Am I against a lesbian being chief? Of course not. Do I think a lesbian can do the job? Of course I do. And maybe she's the best person for the job. Or maybe they really wanted a lesbian in that job and she's just the best lesbian for the job. And with essential services, that's not good enough.
Bill Maher's takedown of the Democrats landed faster than a vegan sprinting out of a Texas barbecue. You could practically see liberal Twitter clutching their soy lattes as he roasted his own side like it was open mic night at a flamethrower factory. MAGA hat or not, Maher is clearly done with political illusions, double standards, and half-baked unity speeches. The train's leaving, and if you want blunt political truth, you'd better be on it.
Axios ran a story on how getting the water out of the hydrants in Pacific Palisades was more complicated than it seems. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's very complicated. That's why I pay 13% of my income in the state every year to people who I assume were working on things like this.
California has some of the highest taxes in the country. Yet basic services are still a mess. Bill Maher has officially dropped the Polite Act, calling out Governor Gavin Newsom for failing at wildfire management, letting infrastructure rot, and stacking up blunders like it's a competition. When loyal Democrats start sounding like conservative pundits, you know the floor's falling out.
Why so many of the hydrants in the Palisades ran out of water, Governor Newsom said the local folks are trying to figure that out. Yeah, you gotta do that before the fire.
Pacific Palisades burns, and politicians roll out speeches instead of solutions. Think Broadway. More fire, fewer answers. Forget brush removal or updated safety measures. There's always time for a climate gala. That's California politics. Theater while the state literally burns.
Palisades, the hydrants were still there. 300 other ones around the city are just gone, stolen for parts. One of the 3 reservoirs for the Palisades was offline at the one time of year when it was most needed. LA's Mayor Karen Bass, the Nero of American politics, was fiddling in Ghana while the city burned and later placed the blame on 8 months of negligible rain and winds that have not been seen in LA in at least 14 years. Yeah, that's not that long a time. Maybe look in the history books to see how our ancestors handled it back in 2011.
An empty reservoir during fire season isn't an oversight. It's criminal negligence. Billions spent, yet no emergency water stored. Our leaders have time for photo ops, but not for preparation. When the next fire hits, and it will, don't just blame climate change. Blame the ones who let the tanks run dry.
The mayor said about cuts to the fire department's budget, there were no reductions that were made that would have impacted the situation. The fire chief here had a slightly different take. She said, "We are screaming to be properly funded." And yes, the budget was cut, and it did impact our ability to provide service. And by the looks of all the fire engines in the boneyard out of service because we didn't fix them,
Gavin Newsom bragged about high-tech fire trucks and helicopters that could sniff out flames like bloodhounds, yet many sat idle while fires raged. Mayor Karen Bass claimed fire department budget cuts didn't matter, like saying removing brakes makes your car faster. No wonder Maher is fed up with spin and failure.
Exposed power lines keep causing fires and keep not getting buried underground because it's expensive. I've heard people say, do you want to pay more taxes to fund this? No. I want you to use the exorbitant taxes you already collect to prioritize.
California is crumbling like a Jenga tower in an earthquake drill. Taxed to death, drowning in homelessness, and burning every summer. While Texas builds, attracts business, and handles emergencies. Families here are fleeing in record numbers. And leaders keep making promises that vanish like smoke.
The power lines that cut through Topanga weren't upgraded because it endangered an herb. The milk vetch, which sounds like something they serve at Passover. I mean, talk about not seeing the forest for the trees. You know what the absolute worst thing for the environment is? Wildfires. A 22 study found that the smoke from just the 2 in 2020 wiped out 18 years of carbon reduction in the state, which means we suffered the pain of driving those early model Priuses for nothing.
Environmental laws gone wrong. Officials refuse to replace ancient power lines to protect a plant species. The result: wildfires torched thousands of acres, killed wildlife, uprooted families, and pumped carbon into the air. Good intentions don't erase bad decisions.
California is the place that spends money and gets nothing, which is why you may have noticed when the fires broke out, no one escaped by high-speed rail.
Then there's Newsom's high-speed rail, the train of the future. Over a decade, billions spent, and it's still not built. The only thing moving at high speed is the budget.
The highest marginal tax rate in America, higher than almost all other states, and soon Greenland. What is included for that? Breadsticks? Because it clearly doesn't cover fire. That's government's job. Protect us from crime, violence, theft, fire. I'm not saying Alabama would have done better with fires by fighting them with prayer in school. But look me in the eye and tell me anyone could have done worse. We just got our ass kicked by fire, something Neanderthals fought.
It's not just voters turning on Newsom. Mel Gibson, Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro, and Jon Voight have all slammed his leadership. Example: pouring water into almond farming during a record drought and wildfire crisis. That's not just bad planning, it's strategic stupidity.
The news is, our fire chief is a lesbian. Am I against a lesbian being chief? Of course not. Do I think a lesbian can do the job? Of course I do. And maybe she's the best person for the job. Or maybe they really wanted a lesbian in that job, and she's just the best lesbian for the job, and with essential services, that's not good enough.
Bill Maher went scorched earth, ripping Democrats for valuing identity politics over qualifications, pointing to Vice President Kamala Harris as Exhibit A. Symbolic firsts won't fix inflation, infrastructure, or wildfires. Californians have reached their breaking point, and America's not far behind. If this is where leadership is headed, Maher warns, buckle up. It's going to be a rough ride.